Hi guys, I'm Andrea. Today's Halloween and I decided to do something fun and do the Halloween book tag, hence all these things. I was looking for my vampire fangs and I couldn't find them, so you're just stuck with this random bloody face, I guess. Close your eyes, close your eyes, close your eyes. So for this tag, I'm going to be answering the question with a book answer and a movie or television answer. So the first question is carving pumpkins. Which book would you carve up and light on fire? For this one I have a book called The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, I think his last name is. Basically it's about a little girl on vacation with her dad's in a cabin and these strangers come and like low-key hold them hostage because they say it's the end of the world and they're the key to everything because there needs to be like blood sacrifice and like a lot of weird things start happening. I just hated the pacing in this book and I hated the world building. Like, although it is an alternate reality to our own, it is not our real world. Therefore, there should be more explanations as to what is even going on. I was left very confused. I just didn't appreciate the structure of it, and I finished it, and it's one of those books that when you finish reading it, you just sit there and think, what was the point of me wasting my time reading this book, you know? Yeah. And on the film side of things, my movie is The Bye Bye Man. I hated this movie. If I could give it 0 stars, I would. It has really bad acting, like horrible acting. Actually, you should watch this movie if you're a fan of really, really bad cheesy movies that somehow have budgets that are way more than what they deserve. Really bad acting, really bad graphics. It has that kid from 13 Reasons Why, and it made me not want to watch the show even more. So there's that. Question number 2 is trick or treat. What character is a treat? What character is a trick? I went with a literal answer with this one. So for trick, I just finished reading The 10th Girl by Sarah Fearing, and for trick, I'm using the character of Angel. Angel is one of the protagonists in the book, and she isn't exactly who you think she is, and you don't really discover who she is until the end of the book, which leaves the reader with a lot of questions that don't necessarily get answered. For a treat, I went with a throwback for me just because I just saw the preview for Little Women, and that is Jo March. I wanted to be just like Jo, and she's really the first character I really like latched onto as a kid and identified with. Yeah, show that was a trick was Fear the Walking Dead, because I started watching it because of the Latinx representation in there. I thought there was a lot of cool Latinx characters, and I was so excited to see like Latinx people in this like post-apocalyptic zombie setting, and then they killed them all off or misrepresented them or just gave them really shitty storylines. So I stopped watching like very early on, so that show was a fucking trick. And then for treat, I chose Suspiria, which I feel vaguely imply on most things, especially on my Instagram at least. And I just love its neon lighting in the original, and then in the newer version, specifically the very red scene at the end of the film is beautiful, and I really like how it touches, like both versions touch on the female grotesque, which is a concept that maybe sometime in a future video I will talk at length with, because I could probably never shut up about it. So the next question is candy corn. What book is always sweet? For me, I chose books that I remember fondly of. So these are like The Bad Beginning, which is the first book of a series of unfortunate events, and I chose Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and of course Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. They're just books that make me feel warm and remind me why I like reading in the first place. And I think they're just really great intro books for anybody to read at any time, because you get to interpret them different ways every time you read them. And those 3 books specifically, I like to every once in a while take a look at specific passages and see how my perspective of them has changed through time. For the film version of this, basically any Taika Waititi film. I love his filmmaking, so What We Do in the Shadows and Hunt for the Wilder People are 2 that I really love of him, and I've watched many times. But a different one that's not by him is Into Spider-Verse. Into Spider-Verse is just such a great movie to rewatch because the animation is so cool, and I love all the diverse characters, and I love the little Oscar Isaac cameo at the very end as well. Number 4, ghosts. What character would you love to visit you as a ghost? None of them. I wouldn't want any of my favorite characters to be stuck as ghosts for the rest of time, or to be stuck in some weird with purgatory, like I wouldn't do that to them, you feel? But if I were to pick somebody, I would probably pick a character that believes in good, that has a very strong moral core, and believes in warning people, because I would assume I would need warning for some reason. And that's the same thing with the film version. I wouldn't want any of my favorite film characters to be a ghost, because usually they're not exactly, you know, great people. And I just don't want to like have them hanging around as ghosts. I don't know. Hello, so my camera battery died, so I'm filming on my phone. Basically, I'm a mess. So the next question was question number 5, and that was dressing up in costume. What character would you want to be for a day? Well, this answer is a little maybe controversial. I don't know if it actually is, because it's a series that's had like a sudden resurgence in book Twitter, Bookstagram, Booktube. But Bella Swan from Twilight. And not only because I was obsessed with Twilight back in the day, like my room was filled with Twilight posters, and I would go to any event that was Twilight related in my town, but because Bella Swan, you know, she lived such a chaotic life. Like if you really think about it, like she's this girl from Arizona who moves to Washington State, so you live in two pretty cool climates in my opinion, deserts and like the Pacific Northwest, and then suddenly everybody's obsessed with you for some reason, like wants you and wants to be around you, which probably is interesting. And then you're friends with vampires and werewolves, but you are never really seriously hurt, pre-Baking Dawn. And then you end up being a vampire yourself, and then it must just be trippy, you know, in general, to be surrounded by people with like these powers, especially when you've grown up all your life thinking that they weren't real. So Bella is one, and then another one, probably Adele from Certain Dark Things by Sylvia Miranda Garcia, who is an author I like literally always talk about. But Adele's like this very badass Mexican vampire, and although she is on the run and being hunted by these European vampires, she is badass. She's moody, but she has really great fighting power, like instincts, and she's a really cool dog. So I'd love to be any of the characters in Mamma Mia, even if that means being an extra. Like that movie's so fun and heartwarming and just makes you feel good. So I also want to be in Greece and sing disco music by ABBA. That would be ideal. Number 6, Wizards and Witches. What is your favorite Harry Potter moment? My all-time Harry Potter moment is the scene when Harry, in Deathly Hallows, when Harry's like in that dreamscape and he's having that conversation with Albus with Dumbledore. And Harry asks, like, is this all in my head? And Dumbledore says, of course, it's all in your head, but that doesn't mean it's not real. And I remember when I first read that passage, it shook me to the core. I was so surprised. Like, it really hit something that these books hadn't really, I think, discussed previously. Oh, shit. But I really appreciated that little passage. I thought it was so cool. And then another scene that stuck out to me is the scene, I guess, when Harry gets his his firebolt. It's just reading like the emotions of pure joy on Harry's part. It was so heartwarming, and I remember just rooting for him so badly, for that to like happen, and he deserved good things at that moment in the book. When Sirius died, it was also a giant moment. It wasn't like I love Sirius. I wasn't happy that he died, but I thought it was a really great moment in the book, and it really twisted it into a really more darker spot. Like we had already kind of had that loss of innocence when Cedric died, but then when Sirius died, everything just, it was like full throttle up ahead. In the films, basically anything in Prisoner of Azkaban, because I think the cinematography and the direction there was beautiful because it was Clairon, and it's so different to any other of the films. And besides that, I think the first time we see the Great Hall in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, like, I love rewatching that scene because all the actors are so young and so little, and they're such a genuine level of surprise and wonder in their eyes. I think is really fun to watch. Yep. And number 7, last question. Blood and gore. What book was so creepy that you had to take a break from it for a while? So for me, this is a little bit difficult because I don't usually have emotions when I read books. I know that sounds weird, but I really don't react drastically when reading books, really, not usually. So it's pretty unusual for me to like cry or be scared or, you know, throw a book or like scream out loud, anything like that. I don't really do that when I read. But a book that creeped me out, it isn't necessarily even a horror book, but just one that I think was a little too close to home. So I briefly stopped reading it, but then I binged the rest of it. And that is Dry by Neil Schusterman. I did a book review on this book at the beginning of the year, which I will link somewhere here. But this book is about a world where water in Southern California kind of runs out and it doesn't come back on. So one day the faucets just stop running water and everybody kind of has this freak out and it becomes very post-apocalyptic very quickly. And it hit close to home because I am from Southern California and all the places that this book talked about, like all the cities, at the universities, like they're all places I'm very, very familiar with. I have a couple of friends that have stopped reading this book just because of how close it is to like reality. And movies, this is gonna sound lame, but VHS Viral, it's not even a good movie. It doesn't even have good storytelling. I think it's pretty weak in premise, but somehow those VHS movies, they always get to me because of the like the B plot that's happening while all the mini stories are happening. If you're familiar with the VHS series, like they're just like mini, it's almost an anthology, I guess you could say. Like they're like mini stories, mini horror stories within like this bigger feature, and in the background like all these creepy happenings are happening. And in Viral, so you learn in the previous VHSs that the VHS has become haunted because something horrific is like recorded and it stays within the VHS tapes. And once you watch them all, like that's how the haunting continues because they like duplicate. And in VHS Viral, somebody uploads all those VHS tapes to the web, so it keeps replicating everywhere and everything starts to get haunted. Yeah, and yeah, like I said, it's not even necessarily good. It's just the concept that you could be watching a haunted video is what freaks me out, even though it's not gonna happen ever. But what if it does? Yeah, those were all the questions on the Halloween book tag. I hope you guys enjoyed learning a little bit more about me. What are you doing this Halloween? Who are you dressing up as? I'd love to know. Let me know down below, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.